Cleaning crew enters from the rear, sweetheart. The words sliced sharper than the recycled air. Captain Grant Caldwell's granite jaw tightened as he ripped my platinum boarding pass, scattering confetti on the polished floor. First-class passengers averted their eyes, pretending not to hear. Arrogant prick. He preened, unaware the faded denim hid a power he couldn't fathom. He saw a nobody. He had no clue that the signature on his paycheck was about to sign his termination papers. But first, let him savor his victory. Let him luxuriate in his cruelty. He had no idea how much that quiet kindness would cost him. The noise of Chicago's O'Hare International Airport was a dull roar, a familiar symphony of rolling suitcases, muffled announcements, and the impatient shuffling of feet. For Alexandra Keaton, it usually meant business. Brisk walks to private lounges, handlers taking her bags, and silence. But today, Alex wanted to see the truth. She adjusted the strap of her worn leather satchel. It was an old bag, one she'd had since college, scuffed at the corners and distinctly unglamorous. She wore dark jeans, comfortable sneakers, and a hoodie that had seen better days. It wasn't a disguise exactly, it was simply who she was when the board meetings ended. But to the eyes of the crew waiting at Gate K-12, she looked like anything but the majority shareholder of Atheris Airways. She was flying to London to finalize the acquisition of a European logistics firm, a deal that would triple the airline's cargo capacity. But there was another reason she was flying commercial on her own airline today. The internal feedback reports for this specific route, Flight 808, had been abysmal. Complaints of rudeness, condescension, and a toxic atmosphere in the first-class cabin had been flagged by her algorithm 3 months in a row. Alex needed to see if it was a systemic issue or just bad luck. She approached the priority lane. The gate agent, a harried-looking young woman named Beatrice, scanned her pass. "Welcome aboard, Ms. Keaton," Beatrice said with a tired but genuine smile. She didn't look up long enough to judge Alex's clothes. She was too busy managing 3 ringing phones. "Thank you, Beatrice," Alex said softly. She walked down the jet bridge, the cool air of the tunnel hitting her face. At the aircraft door, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Usually, flight attendants greeted passengers with warm smiles. Today, 2 crew members stood near the galley, whispering nervously. Standing front and center, blocking the aisle with the posture of a nightclub bouncer, was the pilot, Captain Grant Caldwell. Alex recognized him from his file, senior captain, 20 years in the air. Highly skilled pilot, clean safety record, but his HR file was a graveyard of personality conflicts that middle management kept sweeping under the rug because he was too good to fire. Caldwell was tall, with silver-streaked hair and a jawline that looked like it had been chiseled out of granite. He wore his uniform not just as clothing, but as armor. He was currently berating a junior flight attendant, a young man named Leo, who looked like he was about to cry. "I don't care if catering was late, Leo," Caldwell barked, his voice carrying down the jet bridge. "If my coffee isn't ready before pre-flight checks, you can find a job serving lattes at a kiosk. Do you understand?" "Yes, Captain. I'm sorry, Captain," Leo stammered, clutching a pot of coffee. Alex stepped onto the plane. She didn't intervene yet. She just wanted to get to seat 1A. Caldwell turned, his irritation seeking a new target. His eyes landed on Alex. He scanned her from her scuffed sneakers to her hoodie. His lip curled. "Hold it," Caldwell said, stepping directly in her path. He didn't raise his voice, but the tone was dripping with authority. "You're lost." Alex paused, blinking. "Excuse me?" "Economy boarding hasn't started yet," Caldwell said, crossing his arms. He loomed over her. "And even if it had, you're at the wrong end of the tube. Turn around, go back to the terminal, and wait for your zone number to be called." Alex felt the heat rise in her cheeks, not from embarrassment, but from the sheer audacity. She kept her voice steady. "I'm in seat 1A, Captain. I believe this is the correct entrance." Caldwell let out a short, incredulous huff of air. He looked at Leo, then back at Alex, shaking his head as if dealing with a slow child. 1A, he repeated, mocking her. "Right, and I'm the King of England. Let me see your boarding pass." Alex reached into her pocket. She pulled out the pass Beatrice had just scanned. She held it out. Caldwell snatched it from her hand. He didn't even look at the name. He looked at the seat assignment, then looked back at her clothes. "System error," he muttered. "Or you stole this." "I paid for my ticket," Alex said, her voice hardening, "just like everyone else." "Look," Caldwell said, stepping closer, invading her personal space. "I don't know how you got this. Maybe an upgrade glitch. Maybe you printed a fake. But I run a tight ship. We have VIPs on this flight. Senators, CEOs. I'm not having the cabin smelling like whatever that is." He gestured vaguely at her satchel. "You're disrupting my pre-flight flow. Get off my plane." Alex stood her ground. She was 5'5", staring up at a man well over 6 feet, but she didn't flinch. "You are denying me boarding based on my attire?" Alex asked calmly. "Is that official Etheris Airways policy, Captain?" "I am the policy," Caldwell growled. "I am the captain. On this vessel, my word is law. Now move, or I'll have security drag you off." Behind Alex, the line of first-class passengers was growing. A man in a tailored suit cleared his throat impatiently. "Is there a problem?" the man asked. Caldwell's demeanor flipped instantly. He smiled charmingly at the man in the suit. "Apologies, sir. Just handling a stowaway situation. We'll have you seated in a moment with champagne." He turned back to Alex, the smile vanishing. "Last warning." Alex looked him dead in the eye. "You're making a mistake, Captain Caldwell. A very expensive one." Caldwell laughed. It was the laugh from the hook, cold, sharp, and dismissive. He took her boarding pass, ripped it down the middle, and dropped the pieces on the galley floor. "Prove it," he challenged. "Get off." For a moment, the cabin was silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to hold its breath. Leo, the flight attendant, looked horrified. He took a half step forward. "Captain, maybe we should check the manifest." Leo started, his voice trembling. "Quiet, Leo," Caldwell snapped without looking at him. "Go prep the cabin." Alex looked down at the torn pieces of paper on the blue industrial carpet. It was a symbolic violence that stung more than a slap. She looked up at Caldwell. He was smug, victorious, his chest puffed out with the arrogance of a man who had never faced consequences in his life. She could fire him right now. She could pull out her phone, call the chief of operations, and have Caldwell escorted off the plane in handcuffs for destruction of passenger property. It would be easy. It would be satisfying. But it wouldn't be enough. If she fired him now, he'd spin a story. He'd claim he was protecting the flight, that she was unruly. He'd leave with his pension and his pride intact. Perhaps even sue for wrongful termination. No, men like Caldwell didn't learn from a slap on the wrist. They needed to be dismantled. She needed him to hang himself. She needed him to dig the hole so deep that when the light finally hit him, there would be no way out. "Fine," Alex said softly. Caldwell smirked. "Smart choice. Now shuffle along." Alex bent down. Slowly, deliberately, she picked up the 2 halves of her boarding pass. She placed them in her pocket. She turned around and faced the line of wealthy passengers waiting on the jet bridge. They stared at her, some with pity, some with annoyance that she was holding up the line. "So sorry for the delay," Alex said to the man in the suit behind her. "The captain insists I leave." "Unbelievable," the man muttered, brushing past her. "People these days." Alex walked back up the jet bridge. Her heart was hammering against her ribs, a mix of adrenaline and fury. She walked all the way back to the gate counter. Beatrice looked up, confused. "Ms. Keaton, did you forget something? Why are you back?" Alex leaned over the counter. Her expression was no longer soft. It was the face that had negotiated billion-dollar mergers and stared down hostile takeovers. "Beatrice," Alex said, her voice like ice, "I need you to do exactly what I say. Do not ask questions. Do not call a supervisor. Just type." Beatrice swallowed hard, sensing the shift. "Oh, okay. What do you need?" "Reissue my boarding pass," Alex said, "but not for seat 1A. Beatrice's fingers hovered over the keyboard. "Not 1A?" "No," Alex said. "Put me in economy, the very last row, right by the lavatory. Seat 34F. "Ms. Keaton," Beatrice whispered, her eyes widening. "You own the airline. You can't sit in 34F. "I can, and I will," Alex said. "And Beatrice, print a second document for me. Access the flight crew manifest. I want the full disciplinary record for Captain Grant Caldwell printed out." "Right now?" Beatrice hesitated for a fraction of a second, then nodded frantically. The printer whirred. "One more thing," Alex added, taking the fresh economy ticket. "Send a priority message to the corporate HQ secure server. Tell the board of directors that the CEO is conducting an unscheduled in-flight audit of Flight 808. "And what about the captain?" Beatrice asked, handing over the papers. "Should I warn him?" Alex smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Absolutely not. Let him think he won. Let him think I'm just some nobody he kicked to the curb. I want him comfortable. I want him arrogant." Alex took the new ticket. She waited until the final boarding call, Group 5. She walked back down the jet bridge. When she reached the aircraft door, Caldwell was gone, likely in the cockpit doing pre-flight checks. Leo was there, greeting the economy passengers. When Leo saw Alex return, his face went pale. "Mom, you came back? If the captain sees you—" "He won't see me, Leo," Alex whispered, putting a finger to her lips. "I'm in 34F. I'll be invisible." Leo looked at her ticket, then at her face. He saw something in her eyes that scared him more than the captain did. He nodded silently and gestured down the long aisle. Alex walked the length of the plane. She passed the first-class cabin. She saw the man in the suit sitting in her seat, drinking champagne. Caldwell must have given him a complimentary upgrade to smooth things over. She walked past business class. She walked through economy plus. She reached the very back of the plane. Seat 34F was a cramped window seat right next to the toilets. The smell of disinfectant was strong. The seat didn't recline. She sat down, buckling the belt tight. She pulled her hoodie up over her head and put on sunglasses. She looked like just another tired traveler trying to sleep. The plane shuddered as the engines roared to life. Over the intercom, Caldwell's voice came on. It was smooth, authoritative, the voice of a hero. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Captain Grant Caldwell speaking. Welcome to Flight 808 service to London. We're looking at smooth skies and an on-time arrival. Sit back, relax, and let us take care of you. We demand excellence on this aircraft, and we're happy to have you aboard." Alex stared out the window at the grey tarmac. She touched the pocket containing the torn first-class ticket and the printed disciplinary record. "Enjoy the flight, Captain," she whispered to the glass. "It's going to be your last." The difference between Seat 1A and Seat 34F was not just a matter of legroom. It was a different world. In the back of the plane, the air was heavy with the scent of recycled coffee and weary humanity. The engine noise was a constant vibrating drone that rattled Alex's teeth. She sat squeezed between the window and a sleeping teenager who had sprawled out, his elbow digging periodically into her ribs. Alex didn't mind the discomfort. In fact, she welcomed it. It gave her a vantage point she hadn't had in years. As the CEO, she usually saw the airline through spreadsheets, quarterly reports, and sanitized presentations given by middle managers terrified of losing their bonuses. Here, in the trenches, she saw the reality, and the reality was that her staff was terrified. An hour into the flight, the fasten seatbelt sign flickered off. The service carts began to roll. Alex watched Leo, the young flight attendant whom Captain Caldwell had berated earlier, working the aisle. He looked exhausted. His smile was brittle, plastered on with sheer willpower. His hands shook slightly as he poured sodas. When he reached Alex's row, he paused. Recognition flickered in his eyes. "You're the lady from the gate," Leo whispered, leaning in so the other passengers wouldn't hear. I'm so sorry about what happened. Are you okay back here?" Alex accepted a cup of water. "I'm fine, Leo, don't worry about me. But tell me something. Is it always like this?" Leo glanced nervously toward the front of the plane, as if Captain Caldwell could see through the bulkheads with X-ray vision. "Like what, Mom?" "The yelling," Alex said quietly. "The humiliation. Does he treat you like that every flight?" Leo's shoulders slumped. He looked down at his beverage cart. "Captain Caldwell is old school. He has very high standards. We just try to stay out of his way." "High standards are one thing, Leo," Alex pressed, her voice gentle but firm. "Abuse is another." Leo sighed, a sound of pure defeat. "He's the senior pilot on the London route. He's friends with the VP of operations. Last year, a stewardess named Sarah filed a complaint because he called her sweetheart and slapped her hand when she reached for the intercom. 2 weeks later, she was transferred to the red-eye cargo flights out of Anchorage. Nobody reports Captain Caldwell anymore. We just survive him. Alex felt a cold knot of rage tighten in her stomach. She knew the VP of Operations, Marcus Sterling. He was a man she had trusted. If he was burying complaints to protect a bully, the rot went deeper than she thought. "I see," Alex said, taking a sip of water to hide the clench of her jaw. "Thank you, Leo. You're doing a great job." Leo managed a weak, grateful smile before moving on to the next row. 20 minutes later, the intercom crackled to life. "This is Captain Caldwell. We've reached our cruising altitude of 35,000 feet. The ride is smooth, folks. I've turned off the seatbelt sign, so feel free to move about. However, I'd like to remind the passengers in economy to please refrain from congregating near the first-class curtains. The lavatories in the forward cabin are strictly for our premium flyers. Let's keep things orderly back there." The tone was patronizing, dripping with a subtle disdain that implied the people in economy were unruly cattle. A few passengers around Alex grumbled. "Guy sounds like a jerk," the teenager next to her muttered, waking up. "You have no idea," Alex replied. She opened the folder she had printed at the gate, the disciplinary record. She used the reading light to scan the pages. It was a litany of red flags. Incident 2021, verbal altercation with ground crew. Status, dismissed. Incident 2022, unauthorized upgrade of personal friends. Status, warning issued. Incident 2023, complaint from passenger regarding aggressive tone. Status, resolved internally. Resolved internally. That was the corporate code for "we swept it under the rug." Alex was deep in the file when a commotion started a few rows ahead. An elderly woman, Mrs. Gable, was pressing her call button repeatedly. Leo rushed over. "Yes, ma'am? Is everything all right?" "It's my husband," the woman said, her voice rising in panic. "His chest feels tight. He needs air. Can we turn up the air conditioning?" Leo checked the overhead vent. "It's on full blast, ma'am. Is he in pain?" "He feels faint. It's too hot in here," Mrs. Gable cried. The cabin was stiflingly warm. The climate control in the back seemed to be struggling, while the front of the plane was likely crisp and cool. Leo picked up the interphone to call the cockpit. Alex watched closely. "Captain," Leo said into the phone, "we have an elderly passenger in 30C complaining of chest tightness and heat. The rear cabin temp is reading high. Can we adjust the trim air?" Alex couldn't hear the response, but she saw Leo's face crumble. He pulled the phone away from his ear as if he'd been shouted at. "I understand, Captain, but—" "Yes, sir. Sorry, sir." Leo hung up. He looked helpless. He turned to Mrs. Gable. "I'm sorry, Ma'am. The captain says the settings are optimized for fuel efficiency right now. He said to offer your husband some ice water." "Fuel efficiency?" Alex said aloud. Heads turned. She unbuckled her seatbelt. This was a safety issue. A pilot refusing to adjust cabin environment for a distressed passenger to save a few pennies on fuel, or simply to exert control, was negligence. Alex stood up. She walked to the galley where Leo was filling a cup with ice. "Leo," she said, "did he really say that?" Leo looked terrified. "Please, Ma'am, sit down. If he sees you standing, did he refuse to lower the temperature?" He said, "Tell the cattle to stop breathing so hard and it won't be so hot," Leo whispered, shame burning his face. "He said he's not touching the dials while he's eating his lunch." Alex looked at the elderly man gasping for air. He wasn't dying, but he was suffering. And the man responsible for his safety was eating lunch and making jokes about cattle. "Give him the water," Alex said. "And Leo, don't worry about the captain. I have a feeling his lunch is about to be interrupted." But she didn't go to the cockpit yet. Not yet. She needed the final nail in the coffin. She needed to witness the king on his throne. She sat back down, pulled out her phone, and connected to the in-flight Wi-Fi. It was slow, but it worked. She logged into the Atheris Secure Executive Portal. She didn't have her laptop, but her phone had the God Mode access key. She accessed the live flight telemetry. She could see everything: fuel levels, altitude, and cabin temperature sensors. Cockpit first class, 68 degrees. Economy, 78 degrees. He was deliberately freezing the front and baking the back. It was a power play, a petty, sadistic power play. Alex took a screenshot. Then she navigated to the HR portal. She found the immediate termination protocols. Usually, firing a senior captain required a tribunal and weeks of union negotiation. But there was a clause. Clause 14B. Gross negligence and endangerment of passengers. She prepared the document. She filled in the name, Grant Caldwell. All it needed was her digital signature. Soon, she whispered. The crisis didn't come from the engines, and it didn't come from the weather. It came, predictably, from the entitlement Caldwell had fostered in the first-class cabin. 2 hours out from London, the plane hit a pocket of chop. Minor turbulence, nothing dangerous, just enough to shake the coffee cups. But in the front of the plane, the party was getting rowdy. The man who had taken Alex's seat, the man Caldwell had charmed, was named Julian Thorne. He was a hedge fund manager who clearly believed the rules of gravity and decency did not apply to him. He had been drinking scotch since takeoff. From her seat in the back, Alex heard the raised voice. Sound carried well in a pressurized tube. "I said I want another one," Thorne's voice boomed. Then came the sound of breaking glass. The turbulence jostled the plane again. The seatbelt sign pinged on. "Ladies and gentlemen, please return to your seats," the automated voice announced. Leo and the other flight attendant, Sarah, were trying to secure the cabin. Alex craned her neck to see down the long aisle. Through the parted curtains, she saw Sarah trying to calm Thorne down. "Sir, we are experiencing turbulence. You need to sit down and buckle up," Sarah said, her voice shaking but professional. "Don't tell me what to do, you glorified waitress," Thorne slurred. He was standing in the aisle, swaying. "I paid $5,000 for this seat. If I want a drink, you pour me a drink." "Sir, please," Sarah said, reaching out to steady him as the plane dipped. Thorne slapped her hand away. It was a loud, sharp crack that silenced the cabin. "Don't touch me," Thorne yelled. That was it. Assaulting a crew member was a federal offense. The cockpit door opened. Alex watched, expecting Captain Caldwell to storm out, restrain the passenger, and zip-tie him to his seat. That was the protocol. That was the law. Caldwell emerged. He looked annoyed, but not at the drunk passenger. He looked annoyed at Sarah. "What is the problem here?" Caldwell demanded, his voice booming. "Captain," Sarah cried, holding her hand, "Mr. Thorne is intoxicated. He refused to sit during turbulence, and he just struck me." Caldwell looked at Thorne. Thorne straightened his suit jacket, offering a sloppy, conspiratorial grin to the captain. "Captain," Thorne said smoothly, "this girl is hysterical. I just asked for a refill. She spilled it on me and then started grabbing me. I was just defending myself." It was a blatant lie. 50 people had seen it. Caldwell looked at Sarah. Sarah was crying now. "Captain, that's not true. The passengers saw—" "Enough," Caldwell barked. He turned his glare on Sarah. "Sarah, you've always been clumsy. Look at Mr. Thorne's suit. You spilled scotch on a $3,000 suit." "I didn't." "Apologize," Caldwell ordered. The entire plane seemed to gasp. Alex felt the blood rushing in her ears like a roaring river. "Excuse me," Sarah whispered. "I said apologize to Mr. Thorne for your incompetence," Caldwell said, crossing his arms. "And then go to the galley and stay there. Leo can handle first class. You're obviously too emotional to do your job." "But he hit me," Sarah protested. "If you don't apologize right now, I'll have you written up for insubordination and removed from duty when we land," Caldwell threatened. "Do you want to lose your pension, Sarah? Over a spilled drink?" Caldwell turned to Thorne and smiled, a sickening, sycophantic smile. "My apologies, Mr. Thorne. It's hard to find good help these days. I'll have a bottle of our best vintage brought to you personally." Thorne laughed. "Good man, Captain. Good man." Caldwell turned to go back to the cockpit. He never made it. "Stop." The word wasn't shouted, but it cut through the air like a whip crack. It was projected with the kind of authority that makes people freeze instinctively. Caldwell stopped. He turned around, scanning the cabin. Alex was standing in the aisle at row 34. She had her hoodie down now. Her hair was pulled back. She was holding her phone in one hand and her torn boarding pass in the other. She began to walk forward. The plane bumped and swayed with the turbulence, but Alex didn't stumble. She walked with a perfect predatory balance. She walked past the rows of staring economy passengers. She walked past Mrs. Gable and her breathless husband. She walked past a stunned Leo. "Sit down," Caldwell shouted when he saw her. "You, the stowaway, I told you to stay in your seat." Alex didn't stop. She crossed the threshold from economy to business. "You are violating federal aviation safety regulations," Caldwell yelled, his face turning red. "Leo, restrain her." Leo didn't move. He looked at Alex, then at the captain, and stepped aside. Alex crossed into first class. She stood 5 feet from Caldwell. She looked small compared to him, but in that moment she seemed to fill the entire cabin. "You have a lot to say about rules, Grant," Alex said. She used his first name. It was a violation of the hierarchy so jarring that Caldwell blinked. "Who do you think you are?" Caldwell snarled, stepping into her face. "I am the captain of this ship. I can have you arrested the second we touch down. You are interfering with a flight crew. You are harassing a VIP passenger." "This man," Alex pointed at Thorne without looking at him, "is not a VIP. He is a drunk who just committed assault. And you," she looked at Caldwell, her eyes dark and hard, "are an accessory to a crime." "I'm the captain," Caldwell roared. "I decide what happens on this plane." "Not anymore," Alex said. She held up her phone. The screen was glowing with the Atheris Airways corporate logo, the golden wing. But underneath it was a red banner that read, "System Override Authorized." "Do you recognize this interface, Captain?" Alex asked calmly. Caldwell squinted at the screen. His color drained away instantly. That wasn't a passenger app. That was the Master Command interface. Only 3 people in the world had access to that screen on a mobile device. The VP of Operations, the CIO, and the owner. Caldwell looked at her face again. Really looked at her. He looked past the denim jacket and the lack of makeup. He saw the eyes he had seen in the company newsletter. The eyes of Alexandra Keaton, the woman who had bought the airline 5 years ago and turned it into a global empire. Ms. Keaton?" he stammered. The arrogance evaporated, replaced by a sudden, sickening realization. "Hello, Grant," Alex said, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly conversational volume. "I believe you have something of mine." She reached into her pocket and pulled out the 2 halves of the torn boarding pass for Seat 1A. She held them up. "You tore up my ticket," she said. "You insulted my appearance. You denied medical comfort to an elderly passenger to save fuel. You enabled the assault of a crew member. And you tried to humiliate me in front of my own customers." The silence in the cabin was absolute. Even Thorne, the drunk banker, had gone quiet, sensing the predator in the room. I didn't know it was you," Caldwell whispered. His hands were shaking. "Ms. Keaton, I was trying to maintain order. It's a misunderstanding. I thought you were just what?" Alex stepped closer. "Just a black woman in a hoodie? Just someone who didn't look like she belonged in your sky?" Caldwell opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "You said you run a tight ship," Alex said. "You said you demand excellence." She tapped her phone screen once. A soft chime echoed from the cockpit avionics system. What did you just do?" Caldwell asked, sweating profusely. "I just revoked your flight clearance," Alex said. "As of this moment, you are no longer the captain of this vessel." "You are relieved of command, Mr. Caldwell. Effective immediately." Caldwell's eyes bulged. "You can't do that mid-flight. Who is going to fly the plane?" Alex looked over Caldwell's shoulder into the cockpit where the first officer, a quiet man named David, was watching with wide eyes. "First Officer David," Alex called out. "Yes, ma'am," David replied, sitting up straighter than he ever had in his life. "You have the con," Alex said. "Please lock the cockpit door. Mr. Caldwell is not to enter." "But I need to sit somewhere," Caldwell sputtered. "I can't." Alex pointed a finger toward the back of the plane, toward the darkness, toward the smell of the toilets. "Seat 34F is open," Alex said. "I kept it warm for you." The walk from the cockpit door to row 34 is approximately 120 feet. For Captain Grant Caldwell, it felt like walking across a continent of broken glass. He had walked this aisle thousands of times. Usually he strode with his chest out, nodding benevolently at the passengers, soaking in their admiration. He was the pilot, the master of the sky, the man who held their lives in his hands. But now, stripped of his authority, his uniform felt like a clown costume. The gold bars on his epaulets, usually a symbol of rank, now felt heavy and mocking. The silence in the cabin was suffocating. As he passed business class, eyes followed him. These weren't the admiring glances of before, they were looks of confusion, curiosity, and, worst of all, pity. He crossed the curtain into economy. The temperature hit him instantly. He had set the rear thermostat to 78 degrees, a passive-aggressive move to save fuel and punish the cheap seats. Now that heat wrapped around him like a wet blanket. He felt sweat trickle down his back. He reached row 34, the teenager he had seen earlier, the one whose elbow was encroaching on the middle seat, looked up. He took one look at Caldwell's pale, sweaty face and stiff uniform and let out a snort of laughter. "Guess you're the cattle now, huh?" the kid muttered, putting his headphones back on. Caldwell squeezed into seat 34F. It was tight, his knees pressed against the plastic backing of the seat in front. The smell of the lavatory, chemical and sharp, wafted over him every time the door opened. He looked out the window, staring at the wing. His wing, a wing he was no longer flying. Back in first class, the atmosphere had shifted from terror to a stunned, electric awe. Alex turned her attention to the drunk passenger, Julian Thorne. Thorne was still standing, though he looked less confident now. The sight of the captain, his drinking buddy and protector, being banished to the back of the plane had sobered him up slightly. But arrogance is a hard habit to break, especially for a man wearing a $5,000 suit. "Look," Thorne stammered, trying to regain his composure. "I don't know who you think you are, lady. Maybe you own the plane, maybe you don't. But I know people. I know the senator of Illinois. I manage a portfolio worth $3 billion. You can't just treat me like—" "Mr. Thorne," Alex interrupted, her voice calm but bored. "Do you know what the Etheris in Etheris Airways stands for?" Thorne blinked. "What? Who cares?" "It's Greek," Alex explained, taking a step closer. "It relates to the upper air, the pure air that the gods breathe. We built this brand on the idea of elevation, dignity, grace." She looked down at the Scotch stain on Sarah's uniform. "You are not dignified, Mr. Thorne. You are a liability." "I'll sue," Thorne spat, his face reddening. "I'll sue this airline into the ground. Do you know how much business my firm brings you? We fly first class exclusively. I'll pull the contract. I'll bankrupt you." Alex laughed. It was a genuine, amused sound. She tapped her phone again. "Mr. Thorne, Etheris Airways just acquired Logistics Europe this morning. My legal team deals with antitrust regulators and international trade commissions. Do you really think a mid-level hedge fund manager scares me?" She looked at Sarah, the flight attendant who was still trembling. "Sarah," Alex said gently, "do we have any duct tape on board?" Sarah's eyes widened. "Yes, ma'am, in the emergency kit." "Get it," Alex ordered, "and get the plastic flex cuffs." Thorne took a step back, backing into his seat. "Now wait a minute. You can't touch me. That's assault." "No," Alex said coldly. "It's standard procedure for an unruly passenger who has already committed battery against a crew member. You are a threat to the safety of this flight, and since the former captain was too busy admiring your suit to do his job, I'm doing it for him." "Leo," Alex called out. Leo appeared instantly, looking like a soldier ready for battle. "Yes, Ms. Keaton?" "Assist Sarah. Secure Mr. Thorne in his seat. If he speaks another word, tape his mouth. If he moves, cuff his hands and feet to the frame." "With pleasure, ma'am," Leo said. There was a gleam in his eye that had been missing for years. Thorne opened his mouth to scream, but Leo moved with surprising speed, pushing him down into the leather seat. "Sit down, sir. For your own safety." Alex turned away from the scuffle and faced the cabin. She saw Mrs. Gable, the elderly woman whose husband had been gasping for air. Alex walked over to them. She knelt in the aisle, ignoring the dirt on the carpet. "Mrs. Gable," Alex said softly. "How is he?" He's a bit better," the woman said, clutching her husband's hand. "But it's still so hot." Alex took out her phone. She pulled up the environmental controls again. She slid the slider for the economy cabin from 78 degrees down to a crisp, cool 70 degrees. A moment later, the overhead vents hissed with renewed vigor. Cool air began to circulate. "Better?" Alex asked. "Oh, bless you," Mrs. Gable whispered, tears in her eyes. Bless you, dear. I don't know who you are, but you're an angel. I'm just the person who signs the checks, Alex said with a wink. And I promise you, you'll be receiving a full refund for this flight. In fact, everyone in economy will. A murmur of shock and gratitude rippled through the rows behind her. Alex stood up and walked to the galley. She found the interphone, the one used to make announcements to the whole plane. She picked it up. She didn't use the standard ding-dong chime. She just pressed the button. "This is Alexandra Keaton, CEO of Ethirus Airways," her voice rang out, clear and steady. "We are beginning our initial descent into London Heathrow. I want to apologize personally for the conduct of the flight deck crew today. Ethirus was built on respect, and today we failed you. But I am correcting it." She paused, looking out the window at the clouds. "To the passengers in first class, enjoy your champagne. It will be the last drop of alcohol served on this flight. To the passengers in economy, thank you for your patience. As compensation for the uncomfortable conditions, every passenger in the main cabin will receive a voucher for a free round-trip ticket to any destination we fly to. Valid for 5 years, no blackout dates." A cheer erupted from the back of the plane. It was loud enough to vibrate the floorboards. "We will be on the ground in 20 minutes, Alex concluded. "Please prepare for arrival, and to the individual in seat 34F, please ensure your tray table is locked and your seat back is in the full upright position. We wouldn't want to break any rules." In the back of the plane, Grant Caldwell stared at the seat back in front of him. His face was burning with a shame so deep it felt like a physical burn. The teenager next to him nudged him. "She's talking to you, bro. Put your tray table up." Caldwell's trembling hand reached out and latched the plastic table. He closed his eyes, praying for the ground. But he had forgotten one thing about karma. The ground is where the hardest impact happens. The wheels of the Boeing 777 kissed the tarmac at Heathrow with a gentle thud. First Officer David had performed a textbook landing, smoother, in fact, than many of Caldwell's recent attempts. As the plane taxied to the gate, the usual sound of seatbelt buckles clicking open was replaced by a tense silence. Everyone knew this wasn't a normal arrival. Through the windows, passengers could see flashing blue lights. Not one police car, not two. A caravan of vehicles sat on the tarmac. 3 Metropolitan police cruisers, a black van with tinted windows, and a sleek silver sedan with diplomatic plates. Leo opened the cabin door. The cool, damp London air rushed in. Usually the captain stands at the door to say goodbye. Today, Alex stood there. She had her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. 2 uniformed police officers boarded immediately, followed by a tall, stern woman in a sharp grey suit. This was Evelyn Hastings, the chief legal officer for Ethirus Airways European Division. She was a legend in corporate law, a woman known for dismantling unions and hostile takeovers before breakfast. "Ms. Keaton," Hastings said, nodding respectfully to Alex. "We received your transmission. We have the paperwork ready." "Good to see you, Evelyn," Alex said. "We have 2 packages for removal." First, the police went to seat 1A. Julian Thorne was still taped to his seat, his face a mask of fury. "Julian Thorne," the officer asked, "get this off me." Thorne screamed, his voice muffled by the tape Leo had applied when the cursing got too loud. "You are under arrest for assault on a flight crew member and interference with flight operations," the officer said, cutting the tape on his wrists, only to replace it with steel handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." They dragged Thorne out. He kicked and thrashed, passing Alex on the way out. He glared at her. "You'll pay for this. Do you know who I am?" Alex didn't even look at him. She was looking at her fingernails. "Goodbye, Mr. Thorne. Enjoy the no-fly list." Then the officers moved to the back of the plane. The entire cabin turned to watch as Grant Caldwell was escorted up the aisle. He wasn't in handcuffs, but he looked like a prisoner. He walked with his head down, holding his cap in his hands. When he reached the front galley, he stopped in front of Alex and Evelyn Hastings. "Alex, Ms. Keaton," Caldwell started, his voice cracking. "Please, let me explain. I was under stress. Evelyn Hastings stepped forward. She held a thick envelope. "Mr. Caldwell, this is a formal notice of termination for cause." "Termination?" Caldwell gasped. "But the union—" "I have tenure. You have to give me a hearing." We expedited the hearing, Hastings said, her voice dry as parchment. Ms. Keaton provided real-time telemetry data proving you intentionally manipulated cabin environments to distress passengers. We also have 5 witness statements regarding your conduct, including video footage of you destroying a passenger's boarding pass. Hastings leaned in close. And, Mr. Caldwell, we found the discrepancies in your fuel logs. You've been skimming fuel bonuses by undercooling the cabin for 3 years. That's not just policy violation. That's fraud. Caldwell's knees buckled. He grabbed the bulkhead for support. Fraud? No, Everyone does it. Not on my airline, Alex said quietly. You are being stripped of your rank, Hastings continued. Atheris Airways is filing a formal report with the FAA and the CAA to have your commercial pilot's license suspended pending investigation. You won't be flying a kite, let alone a jet. Caldwell looked at Alex, desperation in his eyes. Ms. Keaton, please, I have a mortgage. I have 2 ex-wives. If I lose this license, I have nothing. I'm 50 years old. I don't know how to do anything else. Alex looked at him. For a second, a flicker of humanity crossed her face, but then she remembered the way he had looked at her hoodie. She remembered Mrs. Gable gasping for air. She remembered Sarah crying. You should have thought about that before you decided you were a god, Grant, Alex said. You treated people like garbage because you thought you were untouchable. You thought your uniform made you superior. She reached out and gently took the pilot's wings from his chest. They were pinned on with a simple clasp. She unpinned them and held them in her hand. These wings are for protectors, Alex said, not bullies. She dropped the wings into the trash bin next to the galley cart. Escort him off, Alex ordered. The police guided a sobbing Caldwell onto the jet bridge. As he stepped out into the terminal, he didn't see a friendly face. He saw a wall of smartphones. The passengers who had deplaned before him were waiting. They were recording. That's him, someone shouted. That's the guy who froze us. Boo, another voice cried. Caldwell covered his face, but it was too late. By the time he reached baggage claim, he was already trending on Twitter. The hashtag Dodge the Captain Falls was #1 in the UK. Alex stood in the empty plane. The cleaners were waiting to board. Leo and Sarah stood by the cockpit. Ms. Keaton, Sarah asked softly, Are you really firing him? He fired himself, Sarah, Alex said. I just signed the paper. She looked at the 2 young flight attendants. I'm promoting both of you. Leo, you're now senior purser. Sarah, you're taking over as cabin manager for the European sector. I need people who actually care about humans running this ship. Leo and Sarah looked at each other stunned. Thank you so much. Don't thank me, Alex said, picking up her old leather satchel. Just do the job right. She walked toward the exit. She was tired. She had a billion-dollar merger to finalize in 2 hours. She needed a shower and a coffee. But as she stepped onto the jet bridge, she felt lighter than she had in years. She had cleaned house. She walked into the terminal. The crowd parted for her, not because she was shouting, but because she carried an aura of quiet, undeniable power. She saw Caldwell in the distance, arguing with a baggage handler, looking small and defeated. She didn't stop. She walked straight to the exit, where a chauffeur was waiting with a sign that said Keaton. She got into the back of the black Mercedes. Where to, Ms. Keaton? The driver asked. Alex looked out the window at the sky. To the future, she said, and turn up the heat a little. It's cold outside. 6 months later, the landscape of Atheris Airways had changed completely. The Flight 808 incident hadn't just been a news story, it had become a case study in business schools across the country. Alexandra Keaton sat in her corner office overlooking the Chicago skyline. On her desk lay the latest quarterly report. Customer satisfaction scores were up 40%. The First Class Attitude Initiative, which prioritized kindness over status, had rebranded the airline as the most humane carrier in the sky. Leo was no longer pushing carts. He was now the director of cabin experience, training new hires on how to handle difficult situations with grace. Sarah had used her settlement money from the lawsuit against Julian Thorne, who was currently serving 6 months of community service and facing a lifetime ban from every major airline, to finish her nursing degree, though she still flew part-time because she loved the new culture Alex had built. But for Grant Caldwell, the landing had been far rougher than any he had ever executed on a runway. The investigation Alex launched had been thorough. It revealed that Caldwell hadn't just been nasty, he had been negligent. The fuel-skimming scheme, starving the cabin of heat and air to pocket efficiency bonuses, led to a permanent revocation of his commercial pilot's license by the FAA. He would never fly a jet again. Not for Etheris, not for a cargo hauler, not even for a crop dusting service. His name was toxic. A Google search of Grant Caldwell didn't bring up his 20 years of safe landings. It brought up the viral video of him being escorted off the plane, dubbed the Ice King by the internet. On a rainy Tuesday in November, Alex found herself waiting at the curb of O'Hare Terminal 3. Her driver was sick, so she had called a standard rideshare to get home. She checked her phone. The driver was 2 minutes away. A beat-up sedan pulled up to the curb. The window rolled down. "Ms. Keaton?" a voice asked. It was rough, tired, and stripped of all its former booming authority. Alex looked up. She froze. The driver was older than she remembered. His hair, once perfectly silver-streaked and styled, was thinning and unkempt. He wore a faded polo shirt. There were dark circles under his eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and endless shifts. It was Grant Caldwell. He looked at her, and recognition dawned on him instantly. His hands tightened on the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. He looked at the notification on his phone, realizing who his passenger was. For a long moment, the noise of the airport faded away. The man who had once stood at the gate and told her she looked like the cleaning crew was now waiting to carry her bags for a $10 fare. "Grant," Alex said softly. There was no malice in her voice anymore, just a quiet acknowledgement of how far the mighty had fallen. Caldwell looked down at his dashboard. I can cancel the ride, Ms. Keaton, if you don't want to ride with me. I understand." "Do you need the fare?" Alex asked. Caldwell swallowed hard. His pride was gone, dissolved by months of rejected job applications and overdue bills. "Yes, ma'am, I do." Alex opened the back door. She didn't sit in the front. Boundaries were still important. She slid into the back seat, the same way she had slid into seat 34F. "Drive, Grant," she said. The ride was silent. Caldwell drove with a careful, terrified precision, using his turn signals religiously, obeying every speed limit. When they arrived at her estate, he got out to open her door. A service not required for a standard rideshare, but one he performed with the desperation of a man trying to prove he had learned his lesson. Alex stepped out. She looked at him one last time. He looked small against the backdrop of her home. "I'm sorry," he whispered, looking at his shoes. "For everything." Alex nodded. "I know." She handed him a tip. It was a $100 bill. "Good luck, Grant," she said. "Drive safe." She walked up the steps to her front door. She didn't look back. She heard the sedan pull away, disappearing into the darkness of the street. Karma hadn't just hit Grant Caldwell, it had humbled him. And as Alex walked into her home, she knew the lesson had been learned. Status isn't about the uniform you wear or the seat you occupy. It's about how you treat the people standing in the rain. And that is the story of how an arrogant captain learned the hard way that the cleaning lady he insulted held the keys to his entire career. It's a powerful reminder that humility costs nothing, but arrogance can cost you everything. In life, you never know who you're talking to. The person you push aside today might be the person signing your paycheck tomorrow. What do you think? Did Alex go too far by firing him mid-flight, or did Grant get exactly what he deserved for putting passengers at risk? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below, especially if you've ever had a nightmare experience on a plane. If you enjoyed this story of instant karma and justice, please crush that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching and fly safe.